Saint Ignatius of Antioch was one of the very influential characters in the early Christian church and is remembered even today as one of the most important church fathers. He was, of course, a student or disciple of some of the apostles. Tradition says he knew Peter or John. As Bishop of Antioch later, he played a hugely important role in the development of the early church, and he was born in the year 35, just 2 years after the crucifixion, so he grew up with the church in its earliest stages. However, it was towards the end of his life and the letters he wrote right on the last month of his life, while he was on his final journey to be martyred in Rome, that made him an influential church figure for centuries to come. These letters actually provide a unique insight into the beliefs, the problems, and the structure of the early church. They also serve as guidelines for future popes and church councils. So stay with us as we uncover how Ignatius, this church father, became one of the most influential church leaders throughout church history, and how his insights and wisdom helped to direct the church for centuries to come. Very little actually is known about the early life of Ignatius, but tradition has it that he was a disciple of the Apostle John. He would have been a child or perhaps a teenager by the time the church actually expanded to his city of Antioch. So he was very close to the apostolic age, which makes his writings of great interest to theologians and to church scholars ever since. What is actually known for certain is that he was a very dedicated young scholar, and he was a Christian, and became Bishop of Antioch, his local city, at a relatively young age, which, of course, back then Antioch was a major centre of Christianity. In fact, the word Christian to indicate followers of Christ was first used in Antioch. As bishop there, Ignatius oversaw a growing and expanding energetic community of Christians at a time when there was increasing persecution from the Roman Empire. In fact, the authorities were often suspicious of Christian sects who refused basically to go worship either the emperor or their pagan gods, and this was a source of continuous conflict between church and state. Just to take a brief look at the end of his life first, and then we'll go back and have a look at the letters. Around the year 107 AD, during the reign of the Emperor Trajan, Ignatius was arrested and sentenced to death for his faith. He was ordered to be transported to Rome, where he would be executed in the Colosseum by wild beasts, lions, and wild wolves and that type of thing. It was during this difficult journey that Ignatius composed 7 very influential letters to the various churches. And these letters have remained influential to this day. The letters were sent to churches in Ephesus, Magnesia, Tralles, Rome, Philadelphia, Smyrna, and Polycarp. And they give a deep insight into the problems and theology of the early church. Actually, one of the most important themes, according to Ignatius in his letters, is the need for church unity. For instance, he strongly supported the whole idea of the authority of the bishop as a defense against various forms of heresies and divisions, and he seen the bishop as a central unifying figure. He insisted that the church, the various different local leaders, such as presbyteries, as they're called then, or priests. To emphasize this point further, in his letter to the Samaritans, he actually wrote, "Wherever the bishop appears, there let the people be, as wherever Jesus Christ is, there is the Catholic Church." So he made a comparison between Christ and the bishop and the Catholic Church and all that. And so this is really one of the earliest uses of the term Catholic, and by that he meant the universal church, of course. So this shows that Ignatius' ideas as the bishop being a central unifying figure and priests and deacons playing a subordinate role below this was very central to the whole idea of order within the church. And these ideas contributed to the stability of the church in future centuries. Another major theme during Ignatius' life, and actually it emerges in his writings and the letters at the end as well, was the nature of Jesus Christ. He seen Docetism, which is an alternative theology, basically, which was a threat to the unity of Christianity. Docetism basically claimed that Jesus only appeared to be human, but he was not really incarnate. he was only a spirit. So Ignatius insisted that Jesus Christ was both fully divine and fully human, and this became very influential later. Docetism, on the other hand, it believed that Jesus was fully divine but not fully human. Materialism, in all its forms, they seen two gods, dualism, a good God and a bad God, and the bad God had created material things, and the good God spiritual things, etc. So in his letter to the Trallians, Ignatius insisted that Jesus was both human and divine. For Ignatius, the whole idea of Christ's suffering, his death and resurrection were all essential to the salvation story, and they were part of the core beliefs of Christianity. For him, if Christ did not really suffer, then the entire Christian message was undermined. So his ideas came directly from the apostles themselves, from Peter and John especially, and they were very influential in terms of later church councils in determining the nature of Christ as both divine and human, and disregarding alternatives as heresies. So towards the end of his life as a very old man, Ignatius was arrested as a bishop, and he knew that on his way to Rome that he would be executed there, but he had no real fear of death. He wrote to the Romans actually asking them not to protest against his execution. He rightly believed actually, that his death to imitate Christ would help to spread the Christian message, which it actually did. This theology of martyrdom actually deeply influenced the Christian faith in the future and inspired many other martyrs who saw him as a model of courage and faith. And Ignatius's writings, of course, the 7 letters in particular at the end of his life, were highly influential in the Christian, and they were copied in Christianity, and they were copied and read for centuries to come, especially in the early years of the church. Many of his ideas also, he promoted central Christian doctrine, and his ideas were actually clearly influenced future church councils, especially at Nicaea. In fact, the Letters of Ignatius continue to be read by Christian scholars and theologians right to this day. His voice still remains a powerful witness, and someone who was there at the beginning, at the earliest times, and would have known some of the apostles, at least Peter and John. So his martyrdom also bears witness, and it's a powerful message to his convictions and his ideas regarding the nature of Christ himself. So that's it for today. Talking there about Ignatius, the great church leader who goes right back to the time of the apostles. He was born in the year 35, just 2 years after the crucifixion. So he was a young child when Christianity was in its infancy, and it had spread up to the city of Antioch. I'd say by the time he was 8 or 10 years of age, and he was very influenced by it. He got to know 1 or 2 of the apostles, to say Peter and John, and he became a great Christian leader. The 7 letters he wrote are still influential to this day. People can still read them. And they also give great direction to the church at various different church councils, etc., over the years. So the other thing, of course, is he was very conscious of the fact that there was an alternative theology emerging, which was later regarded as a heresy, which was that sort of a claim that Jesus wasn't actually human at all, that he was just a spirit. That actually was a danger to the authentic view of Christianity. And Ignatius was very clear in his thinking about that, because he actually knew Peter and John, and he possibly knew other apostles as well. So he wanted to put it down in written form, precisely what their thinking was. That was very influential in later church councils in terms of the nature of Christ. And so that's it for today, and thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe if you'd like to see other other videos like this, or in fact, I have another couple of videos done before this. If you want to have access to them, you could subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching for today, and goodbye for now.